Well, those pictures certainly tell 1,000 words, don't they? Well, now to our world focus. A fast-moving wildfire is continuing to wreak havoc in the U.S. state of California. So far, at least 8,000 people have fled after 14 separate fires. The fires have burned thousands of acres of steep terrain near California's central coast as temperatures continue to soar. Dozens of other wildfires are also keeping crews busy in the west and southwest of the U.S. as well as in Canada. Here's a report.
A wave of scorching weather has recently hit California. Just on Saturday, a fire at an electrical power station in Los Angeles left 140,000 people in the dark. It comes after temperatures soared for the second straight day to about 32 degrees Celsius. The Alamo fire has engulfed nearly 24,000 acres in California, just a few miles from Santa Maria. Crews contained around 15% of the fire by Sunday, but more than 130 homes and buildings were under threat. Hundreds evacuated the area as firefighters tried to stop the blaze from reaching the wineries in the south and electrical transmission lines in the southeast. The Alamo fire is one of the 50 large uncontained fires burning in the western states as per the National Weather Service. High temperatures are also forecasted in Iowa, North Dakota and South Dakota. It's not just California which is dealing with wildfires. Around 180 wildfires have spread rapidly in Canada this week, forcing 3,000 people out of their homes. Most fires are spread by lightning in dry electrical storms. The province of British Columbia declared its first state of emergency in 14 years, as dozens of wildfires spread the rural interior. Bureau Report, WION.
All right, to get perspective on this story, we have environmentalist Aman Keshwani joining us from Mumbai. We also have WION's London Bureau Chief, who's lived in Canada as well. I'm Mandy Clark, joining us on this discussion. Mandy, thank you for joining us, as well as Aman. Let me first start with Mandy. Let me go to you first. We see this year after year. We see the wildfires in the West, in California. We see it in Canada as well. Now, why is it that these happen year after year? I mean, is it human error? Is it perhaps the environmental conditions there? What's the reason? Who do we blame?
Well, some environmentalists say it's actually exacerbating. It's getting worse. It's been bad. It's going to get worse. And they're linking it to climate change. And even though specifically, let's say British Columbia in Canada, where they had a pretty wet spring, that led to the growth of a lot of vegetation, long grass. Now in the summer, less weather, less rain. That long grass is perfect tinder. So it's leading to these forest fires. It's a change in pattern, a change in weather, and it speaks to an overall view of climate change and something that perhaps California and the west coast of North America needs to be prepared for these wildfires that seem to be exacerbating year on year, and that likely looks to be a trend.
All right, let me bring Aman into the conversation as well. Aman, you're an active environmentalist. You've done a lot of parts here in India. Is there a lesson perhaps that India could maybe, people here could learn from these wildfires out west? I mean, when it's climate change or environmental issues, is there something that people here could perhaps take a lesson or two? In fact, last year we saw in Uttarakhand there was a lot of forest fires as well. Luckily, not as bad as the wildfires out there. Perhaps the lessons learned that we could take from out west.
So, I was reading the statistics, and the statistics say that 90% of the wildfires are caused mainly because of humans, and basically when they go for camps or when they're smoking cigarettes or barbecue and XYZ. So I think what we can take from this is that looking at the numbers and the statistics, 90% is a lot because of human error. And 10% is mainly because of lightning and other sources. So I think people should take care when they go out with their families or friends, and they should take precautions and steps and make sure that every last fire is switched off using water or whatever, XYZ.
All right, well, well, let's talk about this really quickly to explain the cause and effect. Why do these things happen year after year, the wildfires, the reasons? Well, to break it all down, we went and researched according to many different websites. We looked at the Weather Service, we looked at government websites and agencies, and both in the U.S. and Canada, and a lot of consistent data that we were able to extract. In fact, wildfires apply to any unplanned or unwanted fires in forest areas. Now, the potential for wildfires, of course, is high during the summer months. Of course, now it is peak summer in the U.S. and Canada. Drought conditions in the western part of the country certainly make it favorable for those type of fires to spread. In fact, Alaska, the state of Alaska has had the highest wildfire frequency of all states. Now, counties in the west of the USA, well, they are typically larger in size, so unfortunately they bear the brunt of it a little bit more. 8,000 wildfires happen yearly in Canada alone. Now, the cause could range from anything from burning deliberately or even lightning strikes. The U.S. Parks and Services, though, says 9 out of 10 fires is in fact deliberate, caused by people. Wildfires could start by things like human error, machine sparks, agricultural burning, even cigarette butts. So people even tossing out those cigarettes could cause that. Heat waves, cyclical weather, volcanic eruptions all contribute to wildfires. And on average in the U.S., 100,000 wildfires clear about 5 million acres of land every single year. They can move at a speed of about 23 kilometers an hour. They can damage trees, they can damage brush, they can damage homes and even humans, really stopping no one and acting upon really quickly. So not a whole lot of time to prepare when it comes to those wildfires. Let me go back to Mandy to bring this into perspective. Mandy, let's go to Canada. For example, they're also dealing with this conditions in British Columbia. Is not exactly the same as California. You think about California, you think about the beaches, perhaps the forests, the national parks. British Columbia, I'm assuming it's going to be a lot more colder, but yet they're both dealing with these fires. I mean, can we talk about global warming, climate change? Why do both parts of the U.S. and Canada, at least British Columbia and California, why are they both dealing with wildfires this time of the year?
Well, British Columbia beaches as well, possibly not as warm as California, but you make a good point. They're on the west coast, and we're looking at annual temperatures that have just risen year on year. It does create this tinderbox effect where and also we're looking not a lot of rain, dampening down the fires when they do catch, and they spread very quickly. The benefit that Canada has, if you can call it that, even though there's 180 wildfires currently raging, the population is a lot less than California. California is densely packed. So even though the area that it might take over, the population is less and it doesn't carry, so there's less people who have been evacuated, but the size and scale seems to be in conjunction with California. So it really speaks to a global trend of climate change all along that west coast area. And there is no, the thing with climate change, it doesn't know anything about borders. So it also speaks to now the American president doesn't believe in climate change. That's well known. He's a climate change denier. California, of course, has control over their laws, and they are very much holding to the Paris Agreement. But when it comes to climate change, everyone has to work together because climate doesn't happen in isolation. So you have a lot of people in Canada, in the United States, talking about the need to get a hold of climate change because although it's affecting one area, it does impact the globe.
All right, Mandy, let me also ask you a follow-up question with regards to that. You brought up an important discussion about the U.S. President Donald Trump not believing climate change. Certainly, some of his bold statements have turned heads around the world. In fact, just recently at the G20. Now, let's talk about the cost, the environmental cost of these wildfires. I'm not talking about an exact amount, but perhaps the larger picture for the generations to come. I mean, the loss of land, the loss of vegetation, perhaps affecting farmers. What is the cost and who ultimately pays the price when it comes to these wildfires, whether they're in the U.S. or whether they're in Canada?
Well, everyone pays the price for wildfires. It just brings down productivity. It creates more pollution. We have less, even simply there's less trees to absorb the CO2. So no one wins with the wildfires. California specifically, the state of California's GDP is nearly equivalent to the GDP of Canada. So California itself is an incredibly strong economy, and it severely damages their economy. Of course, British Columbia is softwood timber, that's a big part of how they make their money. So it affects both economies as well. It affects on every level, these wildfires, the global impact, the economic impact. So really, there is no winners and only losers. And it's figuring a way to how to curb it and stop it is going to be the primary concern right now for all firefighters is stopping it. But looking ahead, they have to have a long-range forecast because it seems to be getting worse year on year.
All right, and as we wrap this discussion up for our World Focus, final 3 words. Let me start with Aman. Final 3 words as we wrap up this discussion about wildfires in the West. Aman?
Final 3 words. So one thing I'd like to add to the previous one, the effect is one of the other effect is that it causes damage to the wildlife, the previous question. And 3 words I would say is that it's causing global warming, I think. Global warming effects.
All right, yeah. Mandy, final 3 words, your turn.
Must get a grip. I think that is the primary focus, is they must find a way to tackle it.
All right, Mandy Clark and Aman Keshwani, we appreciate your input on our World Focus discussion. Thank you both for your perspective. Well, that does it for this edition of WION World is One News. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Archit Seshadri. This is our special broadcast. More news and updates continue on the other side. Have a good night.